The Green Bay Packers get even more bad news after an ugly loss to the Cleveland Browns on the road. But let me set the record straight. Yes, this was a completely ugly game from start to finish, but the sky is not falling in Green Bay. Okay. Everything is going to be just fine for the Green Bay Packers. They just forfeited while really in the entirety of the game was sloppy when you account all the penalties that happened. But really, all of Cleveland's scoring came within the last pretty much 3 minutes of the game. Yes, they did allow 5 sacks. Yes, there was 14 plus penalties. Really could have been worse than that. Yes, the injuries did start piling up. And yes, Jordan Love did throw a really ugly pick at the most inopportune time. And yes, the special teams did collapse on that field goal to go up in the game. And they also did collapse again when Cleveland went to go ahead and kick the game winning field goal. Even if they would have missed that field goal attempt, the Packers still would have given them a second shot after they jumped off sides. But again, listen, the sky is not falling. But what's the bad news that the Green Bay Packers get? The even worse news after their loss is that this division, they all look good with the exception of the Packers. Down JJ McCarthy in Minnesota, and we've already talked about this. Brought it up. I mentioned it prior to the weekend's games that Carson Wentz was going to make the Minnesota Vikings offense look much better with him in house, even though it is Carson Wentz than a JJ McCarthy. They need a veteran presence in there, given the talent that they have offensively. This is a Minnesota Vikings offense that looks much better with Carson Wentz under center than they will with JJ McCarthy. In fact, you're going to see an offense that is like, okay, you know what, McCarthy, keep resting that ankle. You're probably going to see him come back probably week 10. If things keep going like this for the Vikings, it'll be a while before you see McCarthy back out there. And yes, the Chicago Bears had a big win against the Dallas Cowboys. And yes, that was an ugly game for the Dallas Cowboys. They lost one of their offensive linemen. Looks like CeeDee Lamb might end up on the IR, which we are playing the Dallas Cowboys this week. I would love to play with everybody in-house healthy so that there are no excuses. However, the Dallas Cowboys got their butts handed to them by the Chicago Bears. And of course, all is bright and sunny in Chicago now. Talk about high highs and low lows, but let's make sure that we're not doing that same thing because nothing has changed in Green Bay. This is still a very good Green Bay Packer team. In fact, I still think it's the best team in all of football. You can make the argument for them or the Philadelphia Eagles, and Philadelphia is still, they've got some of their own problems there, even though they're coming up with wins. And now the Detroit Lions are the Detroit Lions, and everybody is saying, okay, nothing's changed in Detroit. We're still the same old Detroit Lions. They get a big win on the road at Baltimore. Now they've got a three-way tie for first place in the NFC North between the Lions, the Vikings, and the Packers. 38-30 win on the road. That was a big win. That was an impressive win by the Detroit Lions, and they're still a very dangerous team. They're still a very, uh, important team for the Green Bay Packers to get past. Okay, so man, talk about, social media making things larger than life. If you've been watching ESPN or hearing ESPN analysts out there, they're saying, okay, this Green Bay Packer team is not a Super Bowl contender. Even though last week they were saying this is a Super Bowl contending team, we know that this is a good, very good team in Green Bay. They just took their foot off the gas in Cleveland. And that was a game that you can't take a week off in football. You can't look past a team. And the Cleveland Browns are one of those teams that you can easily look past. We knew this was going to be a very tough defensive battle between Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons, and both defenses, right? But at the end of the day, this is a very good defense in Cleveland, but their offense just did not answer the call. Matt LaFleur didn't draw up the plays that he, I'm sure, wanted to execute because offensively, the offensive line looked very, very stagnant at best. Yes, we did have some injuries that we're going to talk about here in a second, but the Green Bay Packers now have dropped in the power rankings. Yes, this is just power rankings, but everybody is buying into the high highs and the low lows, and the Green Bay Packers now dropped to 6, and now ahead of them are the Detroit Lions. Even though the Green Bay Packers have beaten the Detroit Lions, they just, whatever, it is what it is. Okay, so then you look at ESPN's power rankings. You got the Philadelphia Eagles still number 1, Buffalo still number 2. Now Detroit has moved up on that list. They were 5, now they're 3. They've swapped places with the Packers. Chargers are number 4. They moved up from 7, and now you've got the Green Bay Packers, who were 3. Now they're down to 5 because of that loss to the Cleveland Browns. But speaking of which, you've got Zach Tom and the injury there, and you've got a lot of people chirping, saying, you know what? It's the Packers' fault. They rushed him back too soon. But if Zach Tom would have been healthy and stayed out there and played well against Myles Garrett, you guys would be saying something different. They didn't rush him back. It is what it is. Zach Tom felt that he was ready to go. Kudos, hats off for Zach Tom, wanting to get out there, wanting to protect his quarterback in Jordan Love, wanting to go against a defense that he knew was going to put a ton of pressure in the backfield. So hats off to him. I really hope that this is not it. And Matt LaFleur came out and said this isn't a setback injury. It's not like he re-injured something. It's just, it's just the same injury. Just so happened that he injured it right away again. And they did the smart thing. They took him out. Okay, so Jordan Morgan, it was a very disappointing game for Jordan Morgan. The amount of penalties that just piled up for Jordan Morgan, very disappointing out there. Aaron Banks gets hurt. So now we're looking at an offensive line that is depleted. And let's take a look at the injuries for the Green Bay Packers. Okay, you've got Marshawn Lloyd on the IR. You've got Jaden Reed on the IR. You've got Christian Watson on the pup list. You've got John Williams coming back. Who knows when? You've got Jacob Monk out on the IR. You've got Aaron Banks. Who knows what's going to be happening with him? How long he's going to be sitting out? Same thing with Zach Tom. But thankfully, you've got guys like Kennard. Guys like Anthony Belton. I want to say you've got guys like Jordan Morgan, because you still have a guy in Jordan Morgan. He just was not disciplined. He didn't look good against this Cleveland Brown defense. They had him flustered. You've got guys like Brenton Cox, who's on the IR, Colin Oliver, who's out. You've got Bullard now, who's questionable. You've got Devontae White, who's questionable. All in all, this is a very disappointing game for the Green Bay Packers. I think they're absolutely going to pick up the puzzle pieces. They've got the Dallas Cowboys, an important game coming up. But when you look at just the overall picture, the team stats, the total yards, 230 to 221. Okay. The Packers had just a little bit more yards total than the Cleveland Browns. Passing game, the Packers secondary looked good, but again, you're going against an old quarterback that you can plug and play any of the rookies there, and they're just going to have the same results. So I think it's just a matter of time before you see that in Cleveland. But Jordan Love only had 149 yards passing. He was on skates a lot of the time, right? You gave up 5 sacks to R2. That is not acceptable if you are the Packers offensive line. This is a good offensive line. It's better than allowing 5 sacks out there. It was just an ugly game, an undisciplined game. Rushing yards 81 to 96, but again, big storyline here. Third down efficiency 10 of 18. I don't care if we only allowed 4 of 13 defensively. 10 of 18 offensively for the Packers is not going to get it done. You got to play better ball than that. I don't care if you're going against, a really good defense in Cleveland. You got to play better ball than that. 2 sacks as opposed to 5, 14 penalties. That is the big storyline in the game, was just penalties, penalties, penalties. Again, we've talked about it. Even if the Packers, even if Cleveland were to have missed that last second field goal, they still would have gotten another try with an additional 5 yards, added on to that. So he would have made it either way. And I knew that, I just said, even if he misses this field goal, the way the game is going, they're going to jump off sides. And sure enough, they did. And then you even talk about Micah Parsons jumping off sides on that last series, giving a 5-yard costly penalty. And that's huge. You can't do that at the end of the game. The Packers looked incredibly sloppy. But unfortunately for them, everybody else looked very good within the NFC North. And now we've got ourselves a 3-way tie. Leave your comments. Let me know your thoughts. And as always, go Pack Go.